I think you should start with this economy story. It's all over the front pages. We're going to get the...
It's flipping depressing is what it is. We're 2 days before Christmas.
Yeah. Well, we had a bit of an uptick, didn't we, around Black Friday, and apparently it's slumped again. But look, you know, I feel sorry for Labour. That's not something I would usually say, but we're sort of a country plagued by short-termism, and I think we were all expecting the economy to suddenly leap upwards in the couple of months after they got into government. And the fact is you can't wave a magic wand and everything suddenly gets better. I would prefer it if they didn't put the burden of that cost on people who are vulnerable in our society, like the pensioners or people who might like the two-child benefit cap lifted.
Totally agree on that.
But, you know, look, this lot, they left it in a bit of a state.
We did. That's a very fair enough assessment, I think. But what I would say is when we think back to like Liz Truss's budget, complete kind of bomb went off there, complete and utter mess. But I think the budget we've had from Labour's been a kind of quite a slow death, and I think they've hacked off an awful lot of people. They talked about going for growth. They got, you know, the CBI. They got countless businesses around the table saying, "Vote us in. We're going to be brilliant. We're exactly what you guys need." And they've all turned their back on them. That's what's happened to the government. They've completely turned their back on business.
I mean, what they would say, I think, is get the bad news out early, make the difficult decisions early, deal with it being tough now, and then hope that things then start to improve. Is that the right strategy?
I think strategically that makes political sense, but I doubt many of your viewers at home have a lot of time for strategic, you know, political sense. I think they want results, and they deserve results. And just very, very quickly, it's a very odd thing to be passionate about, but the employers' national insurance rise, I mean, that will stop young people who... And often when you get your first job, it's someone taking a punt on you. And that's not going to happen now. And that is really tragic. I think it's even gone slightly under the radar as to like a real injustice.
What would you have done?
Leave it alone. Leave small and medium-sized businesses alone. It's tough enough.
So where would you have raised the tax?
Well, I'm a proper low tax person myself, so I think the tax burden is way too high generally. I think we've gone back to traditional kind of Labour tax and spend.
So which public spending would you have cut then?
Well, as not an economist, but I don't think we should have raised it any more than it already was, because I think everyone here would be right to point out it was way too high under us, way too high under the Conservatives.
But what about a wealth tax? Would you have ever considered that? Well, you wouldn't have ever considered that, but I think that was something we were hoping that Labour might spend a bit of their political capital doing, because that would mean that then, yes, small businesses weren't paying or, you know, shouldering the burden.
So you say that we're cursed in this country generally on all political sides with a kind of short-termism. Is this long-term a positive? Because people are going to feel pain next year, aren't they? And if, as you say, Labour might argue that they're going for getting things better longer term, do we just have to suck this up, or do you have any confidence that longer term, maybe 2 years from now, we'll all feel a benefit? Public services might be better, the economy might be better, or you just think it's as grim as it looks in the headlines?
I think that 2 years would still come under the bracket of short-termism. I think, you know, if you look at Labour's plan for green energy, that's a long-term strategy to change the sort of the landscape of the country's economy. That would be a way to bring your energy in-house. That would be a way to create jobs in areas where there currently isn't. You know, there's huge underemployment. That's a long-term strategy. When you talk about things like taking away the winter fuel payments, that's short-term pain that actually I don't think the country is willing to put up with. And this is why they're losing political capital.
Yeah, I think that was really unnecessary. I think that was making enemies of vulnerable people that doesn't need to happen at this moment in time at all. And, you know, we hear the case of the farmers, the WASPy women. It feels like almost strategically the Labour Party are kind of picking off groups in our society to really hack them off. And I don't see the strategy in that at all.
I don't think you can put the farmers and the WASPy women quite in the same category.
Well, actually, that's a really fair point. I don't disagree with you on the WASPy women, but I think if people have a problem with the Labour government not giving the WASPy women what they have asked for, that's one thing. But I think the thing that the general public hate even more is the cozying up from those politicians when they were in opposition, putting their arm around their shoulder, oh, we'll do this for you, the evil Tories this, they didn't sort it out for you, we will. I think that portrayal is what will stick in the throats of people.
Quite striking, I thought, in the papers, kind of at the year end. It was pretty negative for Keir Starmer. Quite a lot of Labour voices saying, you know, it's not going well. If you look back on his first 6 months, what is the reason why Keir Starmer at the year end is under such pressure? Is it just because the economy's not doing so well and people are not feeling good? Or is there something that he's getting wrong? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I would probably argue that he seems sort of almost disconnected from the party. There seems to be a lot of Labour MPs, especially backbench MPs, and a lot of the new intake who are quite frustrated in the direction that he's taking the party, and they're not being properly warned or, briefed about some of the policies that he's dishing out. The winter fuel payment, I think, was one of the hardest things for an MP to take back to their constituents and actually sell it, because it's an ugly policy, and it's not something that you would want to deliver to your voters. And I also think things like the two-child benefit cap, a lot of them would like to have seen that lifted. It almost just feels like Keir Starmer is a little bit out of touch with
I don't
the
think
majority.
I agree with about a good 50% of that, and actually, but I don't think
Not
he's
bad
got,
odds.
That's not
That's
bad.
all right.
We'll take that.
We want to know the bit you don't agree with.
But he doesn't. Well, he doesn't have. I mean, yes, these are tough decisions that these MPs have to go and sell to their constituents. But Keir Starmer's got nothing to sell. I mean, that's the real problem for me. I mean, and I know, like, we can get into. And you asked me a question about, tax and that's not my expertise at all. But I do know about selling a vision, and when you have to make those tough choices that inevitably a leader has to make, if you don't have an overarching vision, ambition, strength, excitement that you can bring people along with you, then obviously at the first sign of problem, they'll turn around and go, don't fancy it, mate.
But let's talk about a challenge this Christmas and something where Boris Johnson did have a vision when you were working with him. Boris Johnson said, we're going to raise national insurance by £10 billion to invest all that money in social care. He was thrown out. Rishi Sunak ditched the investment in social care. Social care is now hugely under pressure. Is that a tax rise which ought to have been allowed to carry on?
I tell you what, I think the Conservative Party, and the conversations that we have internally a lot of the time is about how we failed in immigration. I think the care system's probably another one. And I think, it's going to take a hell of a lot of trust for us to ever build a policy and trust with the general public to right that wrong. Because you're right, I mean, unfortunately, that is another undelivered promise that
was a tax rise which should have gone ahead?
I mean, probably. And, when we see... that's a very, very cheeky smile, that, Ed.
No.
I get it. There are tough choices. I completely get it.
So far, you said you don't like the winter allowance being cut. You don't like the WASPA women not getting compensation.
Well, I didn't like the
They should have gone ahead with the tax rise for national insurance, and you don't want to tell us what public spending... I mean, it's quite hard, this governing thing.
It's nearly impossible. So that's my point about the vision. If you can't take people with you, then you lose them straight away. And we changed our vision quite drastically. And I think the country got very sick and tired of that. I'm sure you guys did as well. And, and that was a real issue for us. But it is impossible. Well,
But you've got to be a storyteller.
You've got to be a storyteller.
Yeah, and they didn't quite tell it right with that hike in national insurance that they did propose, because I do think the country could have been behind a health and social care levy. It wasn't that expensive, really, on individual people, and the benefit that you would have seen from that would have been extraordinary. I don't quite know why you gave up on the vision as quickly as you did.
Well, there was sound like all the Tory ministers that you dragged in here over the years, but there were some really, really big roadblocks. There were some really big challenges. And that's the thing, that's the slight concern.
And Labour opposed it. I mean, everybody opposed it.
Yeah, exactly. But this is the slight problem, and if I was a Labour MP, that I'd be concerned about when it comes to Keir Starmer is, relatively speaking, the seas are quite calm. And so if you're running into challenges now, and there are, own goals people talk about in politics, and your popularity is as low as it is now, without things like wars and COVID and,
But a war is good for a government. I mean, look at Boris Johnson. Every single time he got into a slight bit of trouble, he was right over to Kyiv, and he was, donning the big vest and a helmet, and he was, that's how he would win back a bit of, public appreciation.
Journalists did like to ask that. If something was going wrong with the Boris government, they would say, is he, when's he jetting off?
Yeah, when's he off to Kyiv?
But that was a huge... I mean, I'll defend that to the day I die, the work he did on Ukraine. I really will.
GDP figures out at 7 o'clock, about 20 minutes' time. Are we expecting any comfort there?
I mean, there's nothing to indicate that it would suddenly be a huge uptick. But, we keep hammering our economy. We could bring up the B word, couldn't we? Is it a bit early for that? We could bring up Brexit.
Do it.
Still knocked off 4% of our GDP. We could have that back if we... if Keir Starmer does power on with the trade negotiations that he's talking about with the EU at the moment.
So last week it was announced that Peter Mandelson was going to be the new ambassador to the US. He's reinforced the idea that he is happy. Maybe happy is a strong word. I'm not sure he actually said happy, but he is prepared to work with Nigel Farage to get Trump on board, because a good relationship with Donald Trump and America will be vital, won't it?
He would be stupid not to work with Nigel Farage. I actually think that this is a massive error of judgment of Labour comms not to have gotten ahead of Nigel Farage cozying up to Elon Musk. That was just sort of a very easy connection that could have been broken. Elon Musk is quite a shallow man. I think that's OK to say. And he's also a billionaire. And he could have been wooed by just a little bit of British charm. And unfortunately, that went to Nigel Farage rather than it going to the incoming Prime Minister. So if they'd gotten ahead of it, they might be in a place now where...
It's going to be really, really interesting with Peter Mandelson, I think. I mean, he is, as I'm sure, it'd be interesting to know your thoughts, actually, Ed. You know, he comes across like an absolutely kind of expert operator politically, and is a real heavyweight. And, you know, from my perspective, there aren't too many of them in the Labour Party at the moment. But the sense I also get is stuff with Peter tends to end in tears. It kind of all ends in tears. And
he did do quite well on Northern Ireland, didn't he?
Yeah, no, that's what I mean.
So, you know, he's used to delicate negotiations, maybe...
Absolutely,
But it has ended in tears a couple of times.
Sorry?
It has ended in tears a few times. Oscar's right about that. On the other hand, you know, this is about relationships, and it's about reaching out to Donald Trump and saying, you know, there's a conversation to be had, and Peter is good at that. Peter will like the schmooze.
And I think he called out the Labour Party, and it was he kind of flexed his muscles a little bit, Peter. It's like a strange image early in the morning. But he said, you know, there was a real naivety there, you know, and we have to work with Trump. We can't turn our back on Trump. We can't say nasty things about him and lash out. The special relationship we have must be worked on. And actually, like, rejecting Elon Musk from that summit a few months back, or at least not, you know, extending the olive branch.
Terrible, yeah.
To your point, so stupid. So I think Peter, from very early on, identified that.
It is quite hard, though, isn't it? Because, you know, we've had these terrible events in Germany. The mainstream of German political opinion appalled, but the AfD, which is the far-right party, so far-right that they've been expelled by the European group of far-right parties for being too extreme. And Elon Musk this weekend said, only the AfD can save Germany now. Now, that is quite extreme. That's quite out there. It's not easy to cosy up to an Elon Musk saying those kind of things. I mean, you know, in a British context, it's, you know, would be quite an extreme thing to say, you know. It would be essentially to say only the British National Party can save Britain. Yeah,
sure, but he is going to sit on Trump's council. So it's sort of like, you know, are you going to get upset about certain things that he's saying on his social media, or are you going to be pragmatic and diplomatic and actually extend and create a relationship? Look, you know, if during the Conservatives administration, when they were putting through the online safety bill, if they had actually regulated social media, which many people were advising them to do, we wouldn't be in this place with Elon Musk. We wouldn't be in this dire situation where he's got access to millions and millions of people in the UK, unfettered access, by the way. That social media company is extraordinarily dangerous, and unfortunately successive governments have allowed him to grow his popularity.
Can be a bit of a slippery slope, I think, regulation when it comes to social media. I'm quite conflicted on it because I completely take your point. I think in terms of Elon, to a point, I think he's a contrarian, and this might be not easy to hear for people, particularly when he's throwing support by pretty grim parties like that. But I think he likes to be a contrarian. He likes to cause trouble. He likes to see the establishment, as he would put it, kind of fall over and clutch their pearls. He enjoys it. He probably rocks back in his chair when he sends a tweet like that and sees all the right people, as he would put it, you know, kind of going crazy and throwing their phones at the TV, and he probably loves every minute of it.
And he makes money out of it, importantly. Every time he does a controversial tweet, he makes money out of it.
Yeah. Well, look, very special event tomorrow night. The Princess of Wales, highly anticipated, Together at Christmas carol service is going to air on ITV1 tomorrow evening. We were lucky enough to go, weren't we?
And to sit together.
Yes, it's charming.
It was a beautiful service.
He's a good singer, by the way, and he belts out those carols.
We did.
The servants at Westminster Abbey will reflect upon the importance of love and how much we need each other in the most difficult times in our lives. And it comes as the Princess continues to make a gradual return to public duties after completing chemotherapy following her cancer diagnosis. Should we have a little look at tomorrow's service?
Christmas is one of my favourite times of the year. It is a time for presents, tinsel and mince pies, but it's also a time to slow down and reflect on the deeper things that connect us all. It is when we stop and take ourselves away from the pressures of daily life that we find the space to live our lives with an open heart, with love, kindness and forgiveness. So much of what the Christmas spirit is all about.
And Newsweek's chief royal correspondent Jack Royston joins us now. A very moving message from Kate after a very difficult year, both for her and her family, but also for the King. They've managed in this year to not only deal with huge personal challenges with great dignity, but also, I think, to be real role models, to reach out and to help other people dealing with similar situations. And Kate in particular?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they will be spending a lot of time this December looking back on December last year and how different life was, and it's been a total transformation. But also, they get to the end of the year in so much more of an optimistic frame of mind. And if you look at Kate's message there, there's some really, important stuff that all families could take away. And you get a sense that she now has had a bit of a transformation, and she's focusing on how you find the space in your life to be the person you want to be forgiving, and people will have, moments of tension over their Christmases. We all, as parents, we all have times when we wish we could be a bit more forgiving, and maybe we just didn't have the patience in that moment to be as understanding of our children as we would want to be.
It was very clearly her service, wasn't it? She shaped the whole thing.
Yeah, it had a lovely personal feel about it, and that felt very special. And also, I don't know about you, but I love the fact that it's so inclusive. It seemed very conscious from her, and also the Prince of Wales, actually, to make it very inclusive, very Church of England, very Christian, but everyone's welcome.
Yes, exactly. To speak to the whole country, which is hugely important for the monarchy, because the monarchy, speaks to everybody in Britain. The King also wanted to be defender of, all faiths, not just the faith.
Yeah.
And for Kate, this is her biggest event of the year, really. It's her biggest single event of the year, but it's also a stage for the whole Wales family, because obviously George, Charlotte, and Louis went.
They were all very well behaved, as well, like the report. So.
And adorable, no doubt. Louis in particular.
Utterly adorable.
Yes, exactly. So it's a fantastic occasion for them, and it is a way to take a year that has quite probably been Kate's worst, but end it in such a positive and optimistic way when she has her next year is going to be something of a rebirth when we start to see her do even more.
And talk to us about the King, because, of course, we'll have the King's message on Christmas Day.
Yes.
He wasn't at that carol service. That's very much William and Kate's event. But he, this year, despite his cancer treatment, he's been working so hard, so many events he's done, and the palace just a couple of days ago said that his cancer treatment would be carrying on into the new year. So he is, clearly still dealing with cancer, and yet he's still working so hard. It is astonishing, isn't it?
It is astonishing. I think the really important thing to say is it's not that his treatment is continuing a little bit longer into next year. It's that he has what they describe as a managed condition, which means that he's not expecting, January, February, it's all going to be over. He has his cancer is not getting much worse, which means the doctor's very happy and optimistic. But yes, he is now looking at a future where he will be working with cancer for potentially, quite a bit of period.
But they're not saying to him, slow down, have a day off.
Well, he's saying to them that he's not going to. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure they're telling him to take it easy and rest when he can. I mean, he's 76. Most people would be retired by his age, but he's planning an overseas tour next year. It's highly likely they'll have a state visit into Britain as well. And he's going to have a busy schedule. I mean, he went all the way to Australia and to Samoa for CHOGM for the Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And it's exhausting overseas travel. And if anything, Miller probably was the one who came back and got ill shortly afterwards, whereas Charles was, keep plugging away.
We've had lots of sort of confidence-inducing messages about the Princess of Wales, and a lot of confident spirit about the King. But Do you still have concerns about where he is on his journey with cancer?
His journey, I think, you know, I think the King is doing very well under the circumstances. I think, you know, Kate, there's signs that she is still experiencing some challenges, and we talk a lot about the cancer and the chemotherapy. I think it's important not to forget the surgery that it all began with. It was major surgery. So she is still cancelling the odd engagement here and there, the state banquet when the Emir of Qatar visited, and also she cancelled she didn't go to the pre-Christmas dinner at Buckingham Palace last week. So they went off to Sandringham early and just took the time to rest. I think the King, you know, I'm not hugely concerned at this moment. I mean, it's you know, you can never say you're not at all concerned if somebody has cancer and that diagnosis is still there. But at the moment, all the signs are positive. The mood at the palace is very positive and optimistic. Everyone's happy. It's not like they don't talk about things that have got a dark cloud over them. They're feeling positive and optimistic, and they're planning for basically a full schedule for next year.
It is interesting, Oscar, Ava, that this has been such a personally difficult year for both the King and for the Princess of Wales, and yet, actually, it feels to me, as Jack was saying, I think, that the monarchy ends the year in a much stronger position than at the beginning of the year in the public eye?
Sure. For some people, they will relish in this and they'll be very pleased with their recovery. But I think it's also worth remembering whenever these stories come up that there are millions of people who are currently on the wait list for cancer treatment and they will not have access to the wonderful treatment that they've been able to access, and they also don't have the luxury of being able to pick and choose when they do and don't work. A lot of people will be going to work this Christmas with cancer because they have no other choice.
Can I try and sell...
anything more uplifting to say?
Can I try and sell the royal family to people who might not be the biggest fans in the world? I think it's less about them as individuals. It's about what you see in them and that you reflect in your own life. You know, like, we all have family members. Well, I'm sure everyone sitting around watching this now will know people who have gone through really difficult either health challenges or actually just family challenges. And then when you see the royal family go through those challenges, and I fully understand they have a slightly different situation to a lot of other people, but nonetheless, human beings going through challenges. And when you see that and you see people come through it, stay together, bonding, strength, I think if you're not a royalist, I think you can see them as human beings and kind of look at your own life and go...
People will take strength from it, won't they?
Exactly. Even if you're not a royalist, which I am, by the way.
Ava, maybe less so.
Yes, certainly.
That's fair enough.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you to you as well.
Thank you, Jack.
Thank you.